Hi, I'm John Ruggiero, and welcome to this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. With me today, as always, is Chris, my teammate, and our special guest, Dr. Laurence Brock, who is a spiritual counselor. Thank you for being here, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
When we do this show, we try to touch on a lot of different subjects that are paranormal related. And again, doing the research, I came across your name and I went to your Facebook page. I watched a lot of your YouTube videos, and they really kind of jumped out to me as something that I was really interested in and I'd like to speak to you about. Let's start at the beginning. You had a near-death experience at a young age. What were the circumstances surrounding your experience?
I was back east from living in Colorado at the time to visit my parents, and I went to a party and was drinking, and I shouldn't have been driving, but I drove home. I didn't make it back to my parents and got in a bad accident, and I had, I guess, the normal experience people talk about where I was going into the white light. I saw my body there leaning against a tree, a policeman kneeling over me, and it was more of a feeling experience than knowing words to go with it, but it felt so loving and so caring, and just like I used a small term, everything was all right beyond what I could imagine. And it just seemed, it also hooked into a certain understanding and knowing about the human condition. All of a sudden I heard a voice with some being behind me say, "You have to go back, your father wants you to stay." I knew the father he was talking about was the spiritual father, not my physical father. And from the point of view, well, everything's just okay, I went back in my body and woke up 3 days later in the hospital.
Wow, that's something, because we've talked to people who have had similar experiences, and they all describe the same thing, that feeling of just no stress, no pain, just a good feeling. And it's strange to, again, speak to someone else who's had that experience.
Well, you also claim, too, that after this experience, that you all of a sudden have the ability to heal people. And for me, how did you find that out? I mean, was it just...
Well, it's always been like one step after the other. So in the beginning, it was just starting to notice when I touch people. I'm a very kinesthetic feeling person. Even socially, if I put my hand on someone's shoulder, I would notice it was getting warm. I had one experience where I don't remember some of the details. I remember the image of helping this person who injured their calf, and just massaging it because they were injured, and I felt my hands get warm, and they said, "Wow, that feels so much better." I had a lot of little things like that happen. I would say the biggest effect of my near-death experience, it sent me on this journey of wondering, of wanting to learn, and meeting a lot of people that had near-death experiences that were spiritual teachers and healing teachers. So it wasn't like all of a sudden I was where I am now. Right. It was a little bit, and it was also during a time when people didn't even use the word near-death experience. It was almost embarrassing and felt shameful to even talk about it because people would think I'm crazy. So.
Well, you had mentioned, again, in the article that I read, in the video that I watched, that you actually have a checklist of things that you do in order to, I guess, figure out how to heal someone or how to even start the process. What does that checklist even consist of?
Well, a couple of the techniques that I studied use lists like that.
Okay.
So it's really was a way to get my intuition going. So I rarely use the lists anymore. It is almost like I just know what to do. But I have lists. There's something called radionics. It's something they do in England. That there are a lot of lists. There can be lists of remedies. There can be lists like your skeletal system, your reproductive system, and you just check the things on the list mentally, and then you just sort of feel, or I feel something sort of move when I get to the right word.
Tuning into the body, so to speak?
Tuning into the body, yes.
So it's basically you're hearing symptoms first, and then you use your intuition, or just sort of develop?
In using the list, you mentally, I say the list to myself. So I would use that when I'm not sure what to say. Okay. The truth is, I don't really need to know what's going on with the person or even tell them what's happening.
Not anymore, but in the beginning, you sort of developed a method. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. There's part of it that the healing takes place outside of those lists.
Okay.
It's really using the words to start the healing going.
Okay.
It's almost like a key to open the door,
Right.
and then it starts to happen.
Okay.
Part of why I do talk to people is they want to know what's going on.
Right.
And a lot of times I say, don't worry about that part. After I work with people, people feel better, and that part is what's really important. Usually for about 3 days, people feel like a burden has been lifted, and it's just like there's so much lighter. It's
Kind of
really
like people
cool.
that have Reiki for this, and just
Yeah,
feeling like
I mean,
things. It's like that
Yes.
feeling of. But the other thing is that does it take more than one touch to? Can you instantly heal someone? Is it over a time period? Does it matter? Is there like certain things that take longer than others?
Yes. Sometimes it does happen within moments. Sometimes even within seconds. Sometimes it takes over a period of time. I need to work with people, more times than just once. But yes, usually when people start to ask me questions, I just say yes right away. To whatever you're asking me, the answer is yes. You mentioned, can I heal anybody? I don't even like to think it's me healing. I know that what I do heals people, and I tend to think I could. It's just a matter of how much time it would take.
So are these physical ailments or
Again,
mental
yes,
ailments?
yes.
It's all the above.
It's I'm really good at talking about things psychologically,
Right.
but there's a lot of physical ailments too.
So if I complain of, I have a bad shoulder, not that I'm asking you to heal
Yes.
that, but I do have a bad shoulder, that's something that you could,
Yes.
wow, that's amazing.
Severe
It is.
mental illnesses too.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes to everything, and I don't. It does depend on something, but I don't know what that something is.
Gotcha.
So we tend to, in Western medicine, look at the symptoms and we
Right.
think, oh, this disease is harder than this, but that's not what it is.
So it's a little more complex than just saying, yeah, I can, and like the time frames, and there's so much more involved.
Yes.
Does it also depend on me, the person that you're trying to heal?
I would like to think so, but sometimes people come to me, they don't believe in what I do. Their
Really?
family member or friend forced them to come see me. And so something happened a couple of years ago that really was a big step in me appreciating what I do in a way without feeling afraid that it was just my ego. This woman from a client was referred to me who had a miscarriage, and her reproductive system went downhill from there. The doctors basically said, forget about having any children. And it was starting to affect the rest of her health. I knew as soon as I saw her I was going to be able to help her. This was an in-person session, so I gave her, after 2 treatments, she sent me an email saying, I don't know what you do, and she didn't. And I don't really know what I do either, to tell you the truth. But she said, the doctors say I'm getting better. And I said, and about a year later, I heard that she had a baby.
That just makes me think that, is it more of the mind over matter
Placebo.
type of thing? Yeah, the psychological makeup of us, that if we feel negatively and we think negative, then the alternative and the outcome is negative. And if we're positive, then you have the more positive results?
It could be, and when people ask me that, I say, doesn't matter. If you get better, you get better. I don't think it's that, because normally people feel a lot of energy in their body. I mentioned to you my hands getting warm. Now they don't get warm, they get very tingly. I think the warmth was more of, when there's some resistance, it starts to feel warm. Now that I'm more comfortable with it and know the process better.
So you've grown with this since it started,
yes,
basically.
So
definitely.
the tingly, it's sort of like when your hand falls asleep type of tingly, when you just feel the nerve.
It is almost like that, yes. It's a little different.
Could you read that to sort of energy now, the universal energy now coursing through you and then reaching the person you're trying to heal?
Yes. Even when I work over the phones, my hands start to become very tingly.
Wow, that's really something. So what struck me, what you just said, and that's a good follow-up question that I was going to ask you if we covered all the topics here. The skeptic.
Yes.
Someone like me, believe me, I'm diehard skeptic.
Okay.
And the fact that you said even those people have seen whatever the effects of your healings are, because I would think, and I'm glad you didn't say it, because most people would take the out of, if you didn't believe, then you won't be healed.
Right.
As an excuse for not being able to help the skeptic. And you didn't say that. And
that's not the thing. I've had experiences, one comes to mind of someone during the session felt so much energy in their body, was so happy, and I contacted them the next couple of days, and they said nothing happened. And I'm thinking, like, what could have gone on in this person that went from having this amazing experience? So there are some people that don't seem to get it,
right.
but it's not that they don't believe. I have all these stories. This man came to see me one time because his son was coming to see me, and he was suspicious. He came into the room, and sometimes color energy comes in, and the light filled up with green light.
Okay.
And he saw it, and I thought, wow, that's cool. But he was not a believer. So he spent at least 20 minutes trying to figure out why the room looked green, and then he finally said, I don't know what you do, but I feel so good. And that was the end. He just came to check me out.
Do you know if it worked or not? Could you feel that, or is it the feedback that you get that lets you?
Well, it's obviously both are important. I always see something happening.
Okay.
And how much the person gets it or feels it. It is definitely frustrating when I see a big shift and the person's not experiencing it.
How do you see it, though?
Well, my initial talent is more feeling, and it was with my hands, but I've learned to develop spiritual seeing, even hearing, and seeing things spiritually. So,
how does that even work? Do you get visions, or is it just a feeling?
It is like visions. It is sometimes just like a feeling.
Being more attuned.
It is being
You're
attuned.
tuning yourself in on a much better frequency too, so you're not relying on this so much anymore. You're now opening yourself up to more.
Yes.
Because again, I watched your videos, and you started mentioning quantum physics.
Yes.
And that hooked me because I went from thinking, okay, maybe a quack, to this guy is smart. He knows what he's talking about. He's just not saying, one day I woke up with this miraculous ability, and he knows what he's talking about as far as the body and energy and everything else. And that really made me watch and pay attention even more.
That's true, because when I was younger, I would think this is being a quack, definitely. So
well, you talk about energy.
Yes.
And I think what really intrigued us both, that was really interesting, is that you talk about a device.
Yes.
And then it said, explain it a little bit more to us and why you went to this type of thing to try.
Well, I've been on a journey of learning about healing. I like electronic things. I like computers.
You like toys.
I like toys. So the first thing I used, I think it's called a QX. I don't remember what it's called, but it's a biofeedback machine, but very involved, where it tests your frequency response, your electrical response to thousands of different items. Like the computer will send the frequency of vitamin C to your body and see how it responds. So there were like 10,000, and I thought this was really cool. Then I used to belong to these online groups of practitioners, incredibly smart people. Someone mentioned this little device that was different, that worked with a denser electrical frequency, and you actually feel that electrical frequency. So I started using that, again, looking for information. And I'm very skeptical about anyone who says they do what I do, and I want it to be hard. I want there to be proof. I don't want it to be this, oh, it feels good kind of thing. I want there to be proof.
So you mentioned again that this device would sort of let you know where the body was concentrating the electrical impulses and things of that nature, because it helped you.
It takes an electronic reading, so it'll send an electrical signal from a 9-volt battery into the body, and then it gives me different readings. And most of the protocols are you look for the highest readings, and then there's ways. The body tends to just focus on one thing and sort of gets lost, forgetting about overall healing. So this helps do that.
To kind of make it simplified, is like when you're in pain, and where you're in pain, your skin tends to be a lot warmer because everything's centralized there, trying to heal you and make that inflammation go away. Correct?
Right. So with the warmth, it's also electrically focusing on there.
And along those same lines, you said something again, and I'll quote you because I did
Okay.
write it down. You said, it's how you tell where the consciousness is focused.
Yes.
Now, paranormal theory is everywhere and anywhere
Yes.
when you get into doing what we do. And one of the things, because I read it a lot and I look at a lot, or watch a lot of lectures, I believe that, the consciousness, in my opinion, is up here, because this is what, in my opinion, makes us who we are. It's our hard drive, and when whatever happens to the body happens to us when we die, what happens to the consciousness? That was another thing that grabbed me when you used that, when you phrased it that way.
Okay.
It really was, again, my interpretation was, you're saying now the consciousness, this is where everything is focusing now, that in your body is saying this is where the issue is. So it helps you find where the body is saying, I'm in trouble, this is the issue. Centralize what the body is concentrating on, and the mind.
Well, I use the word consciousness to incorporate the mind, the body, your heart, your spirit, all those things. And that when I use that, it's giving you a signal of something there. Like you said, the warmth, something's focusing there. Does it matter exactly what it is? Again, probably not, if the person can get better. So what happens when the warmth gets focused somewhere, it sort of tends to get stuck there. So in those devices, there's something called an adaptive reaction cycle. So you want your body to be able to go into very active, which would be healing, normal activity, and resting. So resting, if you're stuck here, that means you're very sick. If you're stuck anywhere, it doesn't work. So you want it to keep going around the cycle. So the electronic devices do that, and it also taught me a lot about healing.
Was there ever an extreme case that maybe you thought you couldn't help someone, and even to your surprise that you may have done something beyond what you thought?
When I'm working, nothing surprises me.
Okay, I could imagine with what you do.
So with that woman having the baby, it was. So I started doing stuff online, and I was looking. It was around Thanksgiving. I was looking through emails of people sent me, and that was when I realized, wow, that's really amazing. I mean, when I'm doing it, it doesn't seem so amazing, to tell you the truth. So in one way, no, because when I see people, I can sort of see how they can heal. Of course, when I'm not doing that, it's like being in a meditation of some sort, and you just sort of see and you know stuff. Then when I'm not doing it, then it looks like that's amazing. So,
how did you get to the point that you realized that you could do it more than just by touching? When did that finally, that light go off for you?
What was that transition?
Again, it was step by step. I started learning first. I learned polarity therapy, which is very gentle, hands-on. I started learning about crystals. I started using the electronic devices. Actually, one experience happened where a friend of mine, his father was very sick, and he was telling me, and I said to him, I'll pray for him. And it's funny because I almost said it kind of sarcastically, but I did pray for him, and I felt something happen. And the next time I saw the guy, he said, my father got better then. And I go, I knew. Something in me just knew that. I don't know.
Explain it. You just know.
It's inexplainable in a lot of ways.
That's what about, has there already been anyone that has come to you that, when we talked about the diehard skeptic, where they said, this doesn't work, you didn't do anything for me, or that you couldn't, no matter how hard you try, even help them even a little bit?
Well, the people who are like that, they don't come back. So
you don't know what the result is?
Right, I don't know what the result is. But I've had a woman I saw some years ago. She came to me for a bunch of sessions, but it seemed like nothing was happening. But she cried almost the whole time, every session. And I happened to have the good fortune to run into her years later. Then I never heard from her, and I thought, oh man, I thought something kind of bad happened maybe. And I saw her, and she looked so much healthier, and she came over and said, she hugged me, she said that was like such a great experience. I don't normally get to see people years later when
because you had mentioned, I think when we, or during one of the interviews I watched, someone from Australia was someone, so we're talking a great distance that you could affect people. How do you even explain something like that? Or can you?
spiritually, there's no time and space, so it
Okay.
is like they're right there.
Okay.
I like Australia because a lot of times when I talk to someone there, it's a different day.
Right.
And it is like, that's really cool, right? There's the part of stepping back and go, wow, that's amazing, like you're experiencing. But when I'm doing it, it's just like they're right there. And you can, I mean, I just get to see things. There's the coolness I like, the cool part of it. And sometimes things very personal and, that are not esoteric that could easily be.
You're making a lot of connections, obviously.
Yes.
You're getting a lot of stories and seeing people, and which has got to be amazing.
Yeah.
I have to address the elephant in
Okay.
the room. How did people react when you first came out with your family, people close to
I
you?
was going to ask you about family too. What do
Yeah.
they think of what you do? And
Well, again, it happens slowly over a period of time,
So
and
they
in the
got used
beginning
to
it
it?
was more hands-on stuff. But again, a funny little story. So I was born in a Jewish family.
Okay.
After my near-death experience, my beliefs became very Christian.
okay.
And I...
Big switch.
Big switch. And I was very nervous about telling my dad about this. And so I invited him out to dinner, and I wanted to tell him. And so I'm a minister in the church,
Okay.
and I thought he was going to freak out. His
Yeah.
response was, "Do you have to pay income tax?"
Oh wow. That's
so
good.
it was.
Did you have any negative, from someone that just yeah, whatever,
Well, there are times I could help my dad and help family members,
Yeah,
and
imagine
sometimes
that.
I offer, and they're usually not interested.
Well, you have a
That-
daughter. You
My
said.
daughter, she has no choice. So.
How
She has no choice.
But how, does she? I mean, does she
Well,
believe
she was brought
what
up
you're
with this.
doing?
Yes, she knows. I mean,
So
she's
this
had
is what she's
experience.
always known. She's known nothing else.
Right, it's different than someone.
Who's just all of a sudden you woke up and you're this way, and okay,
Yeah.
you weren't that before, but you're that now.
I mean, I have a grown-up son also he's a little skeptical about it. When he was younger, I would help him some, but now, I offer suggestions or things like that. He doesn't seem very interested.
Because
Maybe he's been exposed to the outer world, and they're just kind of looking at it. So he's like,
Yeah.
we're the parents, we're the embarrassment, right? Kind of
Exactly.
thing.
I mean, we would like to believe, of course, that there are people that could do this. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
this is something, and I mentioned that I wrote a book about something
Yeah.
similar to this. And, again, the skeptic in me, we should have had someone come in and do a demonstration because
Yeah.
that would have been great. But the skeptic in me, again, I would have, again, totally said quack if I
Yeah.
didn't really listen to you speak
Yeah.
and explain the
Things made
process.
sense.
And anything is possible in this world. We don't understand. Again, as paranormal investigators, we don't understand.
What you
Minuscule
see.
amount of what the body is capable of and energy is capable of. And reading your story, it just spoke to me. And I wanted
good.
to meet you in person. And I wanted to find out what the process was, especially when you mentioned that piece of equipment. I thought to
Yeah.
myself, you really did approach this from such a logical, it wasn't just, hey, I have this ability, I think I could do this. You
Yeah.
really studied this for years and years. You mentioned
Yes.
going on that spiritual journey and
Yeah.
meeting all of these different people, so you know the different religious
But that's
Yes.
another question.
viewpoints.
Where some people might take it as this is the whatever. You took it further. Why? What made you go further than?
I do think, life keeps pushing me that way.
Right.
Like the near-death experience, sometimes I describe it as a kick in the butt. I'm just not allowed to not do it that way, to tell you the truth. Life just...
What were you like before that?
Was it
I was
drinker? You
definitely
heard-
more science. Well, I was definitely a wild teenager, that's for
Right.
sure, when I was younger. And I was, would never think anything like this was
So
possible.
this completely altered your world.
It completely altered my
The
world.
near-death experience
Yes.
is, I didn't have an out-of-body experience, but I was in a bad car wreck myself.
Yeah.
And when I realized that the car was demolished and the blood was everywhere, and
Yeah.
you sort of do have that life-affirming
Divine
thing where you
intervention
just go, where
feeling.
I was looking at trees totally different. I was enjoying the breeze of the
Right.
wind, that I was still on the planet. And then to all of a sudden, like you said, when you touch people, it felt warm. What were you initially thinking when that was going on? Were you thinking, God, was I given a gift by something?
I
that
wasn't
changed me
thinking
when
that
I was-
until about 2 years ago, really, when I was reviewing those emails around Thanksgiving. And no, I
You weren't freaked out
I
by the
was,
first instance that
in one way I was kind of naive, in one way I was kind of egotistical, and it was, I don't know, again, it was this, it wasn't all of a sudden
a slow awakening, so to speak, right?
It was slow and sometimes agonizing, that's for sure.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. And any celebrities ever reach out to you? Any people you
I've had some people, not super big celebrities, but yes. So.
Okay, because I could imagine that, again, this is something that if it worked, would be something that...
The one thing, too, I'd want to ask going on is that, can anyone else learn to do this? Or do you think this was just something that was gifted upon you?
Well, it's a gift. I think people can learn it to a certain degree. And you're talking about celebrities. I've had the fortunate experience of working with some really amazing athletes.
Really?
And can anyone play football? Not anyone. Can most people play football, but not like someone in the NFL.
Right.
Or tennis players, or there's I'm better at it than most people are, and sometimes that's the biggest problem, is people thinking they're doing it and they're not getting better, and then those are the clients that sometimes, like the people who know a little bit are the hardest ones to work with. So you're talking about people who are skeptical or don't believe in it. In one way, they're easy to work with because they don't have ideas and thoughts that are trying to direct it a certain way.
So real quick, because we have a short time left. I call you on the phone now, and do I tell you what my ailment is? How does the process begin? Do I say, I'm in need because I've got a bum knee that's been bothering me for 5 years. Can you help me? Is that
usually people like to do that?
Right.
I'll get a general feel about something, and if people aren't talking, I say you have to talk about this, because that's how the connection starts. Sometimes people will be talking about this, and I'll say, well, no, I need to change the subject because I see something else.
Okay.
So it can happen, people telling me or people not. So this energy comes in and starts to fill the person and connect them to this external energy, and I see where the blocks are to that.
Wow.
That's really what I'm doing. The physical healing is almost a side effect of more of a opening spiritually,
like
or whatever you call it.
Opening you up to the healing effects.
That is amazing to even think something like that.
Well, you
exists.
mentioned quantum physics. Part of quantum physics is scientists know we affect subatomic particles by looking at them. So it's not too much, how far.
Stretch.
I read something that someone said, what if the subatomic particles are not moving when we're not watching them? And we can never know that. So if we're looking at them in a certain way, it can move things atomically. It's not that far of a leap to, healing can take place like that.
Well, I thank you so much for being here, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
This was definitely one of the more interesting conversations we had.
Cool.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching this episode of New Jersey Paranormal. We'll see you next time.